Why do I have to wear a jacket? Because it's cold outside. Why is it cold? Because winter is here. Why does winter happen? Because of how the earth moves around the sun. Why does the earth move? If you've ever spent time with a small child, you already know where this is going. It never really ends. Ask any parent and they'll tell you the same thing. Kids can ask why 10, 20, even 30 times in a row about the same topic, sometimes about nothing at all. It can feel exhausting, sometimes even a little maddening. But here's the surprising part. Your child isn't doing this to annoy you. Their brain is running one of the most powerful learning programs in existence, and understanding it might completely change how you see it. The why phase is a real developmental stage. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it the why stage, and it usually shows up somewhere between ages 2 and 5. During this window, a child's brain is going through massive growth. More neural connections form in early childhood than at almost any other point in a human life. Your child isn't just curious for fun. They are quite literally building the wiring of their own mind. And every why is a tiny hammer and nail in that construction process. Children are built-in scientists. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine your brain is a map of the world. For an adult, most of that map is already filled in. We know how mornings work. We know why the sky is blue. We know rain comes from clouds. But a child's map is almost completely blank. Every single day, they're handed pieces of a world they don't understand yet. Gravity, time, family, death, rules, emotions. None of it makes sense yet. So their brain does what any good scientist does when faced with the unknown. It asks questions. Not just once. Over and over. Testing the answer. Pushing on it. Seeing if it holds up. Why one answer is never enough. When you tell a child, because it's cold outside, that answer might satisfy an adult. But to a child, one answer often just opens a new question. Because their brain isn't trying to end the conversation. It's trying to build a chain of connected ideas. Why is it cold connects to why does winter happen, which connects to why does the earth move, which connects to what is the sun. To their brain, understanding isn't a straight line. It's a web. And every why adds one more strand to it. To understand why kids can't stop asking why, we have to go back to a chemical we've talked about before, dopamine. You might remember dopamine as the motivation chemical, the one that pushes us toward things that might be rewarding. Well, it turns out that learning something new triggers dopamine too. Not just candy, not just games, answers. When a child asks a question and gets a response that makes sense, their brain releases a small burst of dopamine. It feels good, satisfying, rewarding. So naturally, their brain wants more of that feeling, which means another question, and another, and another. Every why isn't just curiosity. It's a small hit of reward-seeking behavior. Except instead of chasing snacks or screens, they're chasing understanding. There's a psychological concept that explains this even further. It's called the information gap theory. Here's the basic idea. When we notice a gap between what we know and what we want to know, that gap creates discomfort, a kind of mental itch. And the only way to scratch that itch is to close the gap. For a child, gaps are everywhere. Nearly everything in the world is an open question, so their brain is almost constantly registering these little itches. And why is simply the tool they've discovered to relieve them. Why adults stop asking why as much. Here's an interesting twist. Adults experience information gaps too, but we don't ask why nearly as often. Why not? A few reasons. First, adults have already filled in most of the basic map of the world. Fewer gaps means fewer itches. Second, and maybe more importantly, somewhere along the way, many of us learned that asking too many questions can seem annoying, immature, or embarrassing. So we quietly trained ourselves to stop. We started accepting surface-level answers instead of pushing for real understanding. In a strange way, growing up sometimes means growing less curious, not because we run out of questions, but because we run out of permission to ask them. Curiosity isn't a phase to survive, it's a skill. Here's the part that might surprise you. The why stage isn't just a phase parents have to push through. It's actually laying the foundation for some of the most valuable mental skills a person can have. Scientists, inventors, doctors, engineers, most great thinkers throughout history share one trait. They never fully lost their ability to ask why. They just learned to ask it about bigger things. Why does this disease spread the way it does? Why does this bridge stay standing? Why does this algorithm work? Underneath all of it is the exact same instinct a 3-year-old uses to ask why the sky is blue. When a child is on their 15th why of the afternoon, it's tempting to respond with, Just because. I don't know, it just is. Stop asking so many questions. It's understandable. Parents get tired. Answers run out. But here's something worth knowing. Shutting down the why questions too often doesn't just end the conversation. Over time, it can quietly teach a child that curiosity is inconvenient, that questions are annoying, that it's safer to stop asking and just accept things as they are. And that lesson can follow them long after childhood ends. The good news is, you don't need a perfect answer to every question. In fact, one of the most powerful responses isn't an answer at all. It's a question back. Why do you think that happens? This does two things. First, it keeps the child's brain in problem-solving mode, instead of just passively receiving information. Second, it shows them that not knowing something immediately is okay, that curiosity itself is valuable, even without an instant answer. Another option? Simply saying, "That's a great question. Let's find out together." This turns the moment from an interruption into a shared discovery. Here's where this story becomes less about kids and more about all of us. At some point, most adults stopped asking why as often. We accepted the surface-level explanation. We stopped pushing further. We assumed we already understood enough. But some of the most successful, innovative people in the world are the ones who kept the habit alive. They ask why about their industry, their relationships, their own beliefs and assumptions. Why do I actually believe this? Why does this process work the way it does? Why have I always just accepted this without checking? That childlike habit, the one that used to exhaust your parents, might be one of the most underrated tools for growth as an adult. So, why do kids ask why so many times in a row? Because their brains are wired to close the gap between what they know and what they don't. Every question is a small act of building understanding, one piece at a time. It's not a phase to survive, it's the blueprint for how humans learn best. The next time a child, or even a coworker, or a stranger, asks why one more time than feels comfortable, try not to see it as annoying. See it for what it actually is. A brain doing exactly what it was built to do. And maybe, just maybe, it's worth asking yourself one more why today too.